Hey, Sarah. Good morning, my love. Hi, everybody. This is Ing, and I'm just getting myself set up for our chat today with my friend Brett Littlman, the ED, the Executive Director of the Noguchi Museum in Long Island City. I hope everyone is having a great day so far. It is May 1st, which means we got through April, which is a huge feat, and I am very proud of everybody for getting through probably the longest, hardest month in recent history for me. But yeah, I see a lot of people, so let me know where you're joining from. I'm expecting a lot of international visitors today from around the world or around the country. We're just going to wait for Brett to come on, and then we'll have a really good conversation because he's going to have, hey, Brett, what's up? I see you. He's going to have a lot to share with us. With Brett soon. Let's see if this works.
Hey, Ing.
Hi.
How are you?
Good morning. How are you?
I'm okay. Good morning.
Yeah. Good morning. I'm getting my first cup of coffee in, actually.
I'm having some fresh mint tea. I've become a tea drinker.
Yes, that's good. That's very nice.
It is nice.
I gave up coffee for like a year and a half and had tea exclusively, and I loved it. And
yeah.
Then,
I always feel like, the scene in Fast Times at Ridgemont High where the science teachers goes, oh, decaf, not good.
Brett, thank you so much for joining me today. And I know so many people are excited to hear from you. But before we start, I just want to ask, how are you doing today? We checked in with each other last week. How are you?
I'm okay today. Fortunately, the museum just got notification that we got the PPP loan, which is great. That's been very helpful for us for the past several weeks. It's not been an easy process. So that really will help change the outlook for this year, which is great.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wow. And did you get the $450K that you requested?
We did.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
I mean, it's crazy to say, like, congratulations to getting, a government loan. It's just so warped. It's so warped. Well, but that's wonderful.
The system has been very difficult for nonprofits. I've been on a lot of phone calls. I mean, I think it's interesting to see how this played out. A lot of the smaller regional museums in other places other than New York or large cities seem to get it right away because their banks were maybe tied to the SBA a little bit more closely. If you worked with a bigger bank in a large city, it probably, you still may be waiting and you may not get it. So we were very, very fortunate, and but it's worth looking at. I hope that at some point, there's an audit. I mean, I did see the kind of documentation from the SBA of where these loans went in the first round, and a lot of it was construction and hotels and larger businesses, and not a lot of nonprofits. That was a very small portion. I mean, we're an economic engine for this country. I mean, it's a little bit sad. I'm never a big fan of making that argument, but it is true. We're $1 billion industry. And, I think we're kind of treated like some kind of luxury good. It's not, I mean, I have 40 or 50 people in my employ, so it is quite serious. I mean, it's a matter of me being able to pay them.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, let's step back for a minute and talk a little bit about the Noguchi for those who may not have as much of a background on the institution. First of all, you and I have known each other for a long time. We used to work at PS1 together, where you were the associate director, or you were running the place, basically, and balancing the budget, working very closely with MoMA, because PS1 at that time was not truly part of MoMA. So we worked really closely together. And then you were the executive director of the Drawing Center for a while. And when did you join the Noguchi? Was it 3 years ago?
Actually, to the day, 2 years ago.
2 years ago. Okay.
Today was my first day at the Noguchi Museum 2 years ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Wow. That's so many things to congratulate you on today, May 1st. Well, and so the Noguchi is the garden and museum that was Isamu Noguchi's studio and foundation for a long time, correct? And then became a museum?
Slight correction there. I mean,
you tell me.
Yeah, Noguchi moved to Long Island City in about 1961. He bought a building, which is his studio, which is across the street from where the museum is. And he operated out of that studio until his death in 1988. That was kind of the home base. The reason why Noguchi moved from Greenwich Village to Long Island City, Astoria, was that there were a lot of his friends, including Edison Price, who was an aluminum fabricator and kind of great inventor, who also worked with Buckminster Fuller. And there was also a lot of his materials were out there: marble, steel, aluminum. So he was living in Greenwich Village. I think Noguchi was a very social person. And I think too many people were kind of stopping by the studio when he was living in Duke Valley. And so he found this studio and felt that it was a little bit like the Wild West. I mean, just the car ride over the 59th Street Bridge might have been enough of a deterrent to keep people away.
Right.
And so he had the studio. Across the street was an old photo retouching factory. It had been derelict. He looked at it for about a decade. And then I would say in the early 70s, Noguchi already had a germ of an idea that maybe he would start a museum. Working in big stone, it's not easy to store them. It's not easy to move things around. So he was able to purchase the old factory in the early 70s. And then in the 80s, he was able to purchase another lot that completed the whole street. It was an old car garage. Okay. And with Shoji Sadao from Sadao Fuller Architects, they designed the kind of entranceway and the outdoor spaces and the garden. I
didn't realize that.
Yeah. So the foundation was really kind of open to the public in about 1984. You would be able to make an appointment and go there. And in 1986, I went there with my dad. I grew up in New York, and we made an appointment and kind of went. And there was no one there. It was very private, quite beautiful.
Wow. So you remember your first time seeing the Noguchi space?
I do.
That's cool.
It was a pretty profound experience. The building was a little different than what it is today. We didn't meet Noguchi, but he was on the grounds. I mean, maybe we saw him in the distance. My dad's a fan of his work, and so it definitely made an imprint on me. It is an incredibly beautiful space to go into. The museum officially kind of opened after his death, and then there was some consolidation of the foundation and the museum. And I would say that since the early 90s, we've been operating first as a private foundation, then later changed over to a normal 501c3.
Okay.
So for those who are just a long arc there, it's about a 40-year arc from where he started in Long Island City, where the museum is.
Right. Yeah. And I guess, in a way that's pretty impressive for an artist to create that kind of foundational, system for his legacy and his artwork, because a lot of artists, I would say, are just too busy making art or trying to survive or, putting on shows that they're not looking at their legacy. So to be able to have this space for us to enjoy it. I mean, it is one of my favorite places in New York City, in the world, perhaps. And I was so excited when you became the director and I could come hang out with you and get some private tours.
Boston, but other than that, if you were here more.
But now in, my Greenpoint place, I am much closer, and I was going to go last month. And here we are. So in terms of the Noguchi Museum and running the institution, you're overseeing all aspects of it, just the physical health, but the health of your staff. Can you talk to me a little bit about how COVID-19 affected you and the operations once it first hit New York?
Yeah, we were talking about it in early March, in senior staff meetings and with the deputy director. Obviously, I've been following it, and I have a lot of European colleagues, and so things in Italy were not looking good, things in Spain. France was also beginning to have an outbreak. I think that it was a little bit, to be honest, because, our local government, although now has had a much better response, there was not a lot of alarm bells ringing in late February, early March. I said at some point to the staff, it's not a question of when we're going to close. It's just, it's not a question of if we're going to close. It's just when we're going to close.
When. So you expected that. You knew it was going to happen. I see.
Yeah, it definitely seemed inevitable. And I think New York, given the density of people, in talking to other colleagues around the city, I think people were beginning. Everyone was at a slightly different level of the spectrum. But, for us, to be totally honest, on March 12th, I went to a dinner party with some people, some new friends, and they had some friends who were from the World Health Organization there. We all sat 6 feet away from each other. And these people
Oh,
were
wow.
very high-level business people flying all over the world. And the host announced that he'd canceled all of his flights for the rest of the year, that he was pulling his kids out of school. And the people from the World Health Organization said this will be the last dinner party that you'll be going to for probably a couple of months. So it scared the hell out of me, basically. And I went back to work the next day on Wednesday. That night, I host some little concerts in my loft. I was really on the fence about it. We ended up doing it. It was a very small group. We kind of kept everyone distant. May 14th on Thursday, I went to work, and outside, we're across the street from the Costco, which is a big kind of supermarket, bulk supermarket. There was a 4-mile line of cars to get into the supermarket, and literally there were people on the street fist fighting over toilet paper. And so I think for me, that was the moment of like, the panic has hit. And I walked into the building and I just said, I think we're going to have to close down today, tomorrow, Saturday. And ironically, we had a board meeting that night. So we spent, we basically cleared our agenda and spoke mostly about how we might shut down, what the impact was. I'm very glad we did that. We were pretty much on the front end of that curve. My mantra was kind of people over program. I mean, I know a lot of my staff are living paycheck to paycheck. We have a lot of part-time people that are employed as educators and gallery attendants. We have the luxury of a museum that is a single artist foundation. I mean, we do contemporary art, and so we have some shows that are planned with other artists. But the reality of our institution is we could just put Noguchi's up for the next 2 years in intelligent, well thought out shows that go deeper into Noguchi, and we would be fine. And actually, I think our audience would be perfectly happy with that. So it's not even a fallback position. It's actually the mission of the organization. And I would say we, within about a week of time, had already recast our budget, reforecasted, made a commitment to the staff immediately that we would pay everyone until June 1st, regardless of whether or not we were closed. And I think that was the kind of guiding principle of our initial reaction to it.
That's beautiful. Yeah. But I mean, it's really heartening to hear that because of all of the news we've seen about other institutions, and I don't know what their predicaments are, right? They have huge overheads and different kinds of budgets, but the furloughing of education departments, I think that's something that a lot of people have been upset about. And who knows what's to come, right? This is just the beginning. And of course, I wish Noguchi as an institution will be able to continue to support your staff, but you also don't know what's to come. But now that you have the PPP, which is a good amount, it's $450,000. But what's your total operating budget?
It's about $6 million.
Okay. So how?
Yeah, go ahead.
No. I mean, how do you feel? How healthy do you feel at this point now that you have the $450K?
Well, I mean, we initially, in our reproject, we cut out about $1.2 million of income, which is very significant. That's more than 1/5 of our budget. And we trimmed the sales and expenses by about $600,000. That was predicated on a June 1st opening. We're now predicting a July 1 opening, and that's, up in the air. We really don't know. We have no guidance yet. And also, we can talk a little bit, and we should talk about what it means to reopen a museum during COVID, because that's a very complicated thing. And we've been spending the past several weeks really digging into that. If things go past July, and there are some institutions that I'm talking to that are saying that they may not open until September. There are some that may, if they're university galleries and the universities don't come back, they may not open until next year. So, right now, everything, I would say the shelf life of any decision I make is about 48 hours. There's not a lot of, and of course with the staff, people are saying, when can you tell us when we're going to reopen? And I just say, today it's July 1, but tomorrow it could be August 1st. My feeling about all of this is that the Noguchi Museum is built to last because we have a very diverse source of income. The attendance is not a big driver of our income. I mean, it's helpful, but it doesn't really matter that much. However, we have a lot of retail, because we also, as the foundation and the estate, oversee Akari and all the Noguchi designs. So that brings in a pretty significant amount of income. We have a very good endowment. Of course, it's gone down because of the stock market. But that has been helpful to us too. It brings in about 1/3 of our income every year. I've been through this dance a couple of times. I mean, I started in the field in the kind of mid-90s, during a little bit of a not a great economic moment. I mean, after the financial crashes of the late 80s and the art world crash. I went through 2008. I went through 9/11. I've been through Sandy. So I've been through this dance before. I mean, a lot of people say like, oh, Brett, someone should give you like an honorary PhD in art history, and I feel like someone should give me an honorary MBA because I've been running businesses. I mean, ostensibly, I'm not trained as an art historian. I've been a deputy director and a director. I'm pretty knowledgeable about finance. And my feeling is that, once you get past the practical and pragmatic, I mean, listen, you have to make hard decisions, the other thing I wanted to say is it's not one size fits all. I mean, the Noguchi is in a very unique position. We're in a strong position. We had good cash reserves coming into the year. We've been pretty smart, I think, about how we've been managing ourselves in the past couple of years. And I inherited a very strong, financially strong institution. But I've been in other places where, I'm 2 weeks ahead of the game. I mean, and it's hard. Smaller organizations, I've been pushing rocks up hills all year. I start with 0 and I've got to get to 2 million. I have to still push a rock up a hill, but it's just not as hard.
Well, I just want to bring up this really tiny point because when you said that the institution is a little bit lucky in the fact that there's a diverse mix of income that is supporting it. I think a lot about Noguchi as an artist and how he, he was licensing his artworks. He was in design. He did so many different types of artworks, and partly it was because sometimes one practice wasn't catching on, and he needed to make money. Akari is a utility in a way, right? It's a type of light. I mean, it's a very nice type of light, but
I don't know if you know the history of Akari, but it's also, I mean, I think Noguchi generally, because of his kind of humanist approach and also his early days of collaboration, particularly with Buckminster Fuller and Martha Graham, I think was very open and was really a true polymath. I mean, he was an inventor. He was someone who was interested in innovation. He was pretty fearless. He didn't care about boundaries. I mean, even his own identity as being kind of American, but with a Japanese father. I think that struggle between crossing boundaries at all times was something that he was very conscious of. Interestingly, Akari was really started as a project to help Japan, to help Gifu. He was invited by the mayor of Gifu, a town that is known for traditional lantern making in 1954, post-World War II. And he had some problems in Japan. I mean, he wasn't necessarily, he was considered really an American there, respected by artists in the avant-garde, but, people called him an aggressive American. So to have an American artist come in and to rethink traditional lanterns was pretty radical. That relationship was really about restoring the economy of Gifu and using Noguchi as an avatar or as a kind of messenger, for this traditional business. Of course, Noguchi was very, very, very savvy and very entrepreneurial. Not in the same way as Warhol, but I would say that they're kind of flip sides of a coin. I mean, they, Noguchi maybe was his artwork, although very well respected, was probably less known than the Noguchi table and Akari lamps and other things he did in other realms, and the collaboration with Martha Graham as well.
Yeah, no, I just think it's set up his foundation for a little bit of fiscal health compared to perhaps other artists' legacies. But anyway, that's a whole other conversation. So we are more than halfway through. I definitely want to talk about your outlook and your plans. I mean, I know you're saying that, whatever you say has like a 48-hour shelf life. But right now you are talking about opening in the summer and yet there's no official guidance. And yet, where would that guidance come from? Like, is it from the city? Is it from the state? Where do museums look for this?
Well, I mean, there are a lot of professional organizations. I'm a member of several of them. AAMD, which is the American Association of Museum Directors, which has about 450 members around the North American continent, including Mexico. A smaller group called the Contemporary Art Museum Directors, and that group is an ad hoc group, and there are about 30 of us that meet once a year. And then recently there's been several layers of New York museum directors. I'm on a call that Jessica Morgan from Diaz initiated every week. So right now I'm kind of dipping into 3 different organizations. I have 2 standing phone calls each week where we're sharing information, the New York group and the Contemporary group, which is a national group. I think the issue for us right now is, there's no one size fits all. We all have different ways of checking people in. We all have different kinds of physical spaces. I might be able to open sooner than another museum in New York because we're thinking about how do we get people in, and we may have to go time ticket situation. But the reality is there's really not a lot of medical guidance about what the rules are. I mean, we all know about social distancing, but should I put up plastic shields in between the frontline workers and our guests? Should I, if I have groups of people coming in that are huddled together, should they be, I mean, even if they're friends, should they be social distancing? How do I get my guards? I mean, there's a lot of discussion in China about taking temperature. That's been something in Asia that's been much more used. I don't think I would want to take people's temperature. As a matter of fact, I don't think that that's a very good test at all for people having COVID. Do we, and I think we will have to ask people who come to bring their own mask. Maybe we have to provide gloves. And the reality is we can't even get PPE for our own staff at the moment. So I don't really know how we do this. We have a retail store, a cafe. We'll have to shut the cafe down. Obviously, no food service. We'll probably have to move our store to another location in our building to create better environments for at least browsing. But can we even have a store? How do you have something that people are touching? How do you have books out? So there's a lot of complicated things. I guess that, I surely don't want to sound alarmist, but in my career, I surely have made a lot of hard decisions, but these decisions are actually life and death decisions. I mean, I could be putting my staff in physical risk. And so I've been taking them quite seriously. I mean, maybe most seriously, things that I've contemplated ever in my career. I think that there are solutions, but I think what we have to do is we have a task force that gets together. They reported to me this week, and then we'll meet again next week. I shared what our task force came up with other museum directors, and I've asked them back for what they're going to do. And I think we're going to have to sort this out kind of on a local level.
It's like museum Twitter. It's everyone just share information. I mean, there was this really interesting article that I read last night in the New Yorker by Siddhartha Mukherjee, Sarah Zia's husband, who is a medical doctor and also a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist. I was just saying to Devin, I was like, they're the coolest couple, I think, in all of America. Anyway, but Siddhartha was talking about, the way that the medical system is breaking down, but a lot of it is about the supply chain, and how, obviously, why couldn't our medical system have initiated the fabrication of masks, in January and retrofitted certain factories to make these masks? And he brought up this example of a Toyota, a plant that made a very small but specific part for Toyota. And it was wiped out in a fire, and it basically decimated Toyota sales for the next 4 weeks because the cars couldn't function without this tiny little part. But instead, what the country did was all of these factories who made typewriter parts, other things that had no relation at all to cars, they went off and decided to make this part because Toyota was the biggest company in the country. They needed to make it happen so that, their economy could thrive. And within a month, they were back.
Yeah.
And, so his argument was there was no call to action on the part of our government, on any government, to create a system like this. It just wasn't, it was so, it was just all over the place. And I guess that's the federal versus state program or, system. But even then, there could have been people who thought, well, my factory, I'm making parts that nobody wants right now. I have a product that nobody needs right now. So why don't I go ahead and make something that people could use? I just don't see these kinds of conversations happening. Maybe they will more as we get away from the shock of it all. But
yeah, well,
what do you think
that would be, my sense is that in the United States, since we're different than Europe in that we don't have a kind of strong central government in that same way. The decision for me to close was totally my own decision. And I think the museum world, we all made our own decisions without any state or local guidance. We closed before we were told to close, and many museums had to make their calculation ahead of that time. We've made other decisions that, about staffing. I mean, we put into place what we thought were the best practices for the essential workers that need to go in without really much guidance. We have some guards that I'm very concerned about that stay overnight. They have to come by train or bus. And so, we've had to kind of slog through all of these things and come up with our own solutions as best as we can. I think for me, the other issue that we'll have to kind of think about, and this is something that I've been spending a lot of time on, is just the psychology of the audience. I'm running my field, a museum or a gallery brings people into small spaces to, together to look at things. This is not an ideal business model in the COVID world. Right. And so I want to make sure when we reopen that we project a sense of we've taken care, we're doing the best that we can. We're looking after your health. And for the psychology of people that want to come here, that we are presenting a safe and healthy space for them to be in, even though we probably have to limit the number of people that can come in. And we're working on that now. But that's going to be very important because we basically canceled all our live programming for the rest of the year. And I have I guess, I'm on the spectrum of, I just don't feel on a personal level, and maybe it's just me, that I can go to concerts or lectures this year. I don't think, until there's a vaccine, I don't see that as being a kind of safe environment. So I think we have to rethink what the museum platform looks like. A lot of my colleagues are going, full bore into online stuff. We're doing a little bit of online stuff, and I think we're doing it carefully and very mission driven. There's so much out there, as you know, I'm the audience, but I'm barely looking at anything because, first of all, I'm a little overwhelmed with work. But I'm just saying,
you have a few things going on.
I can't do the virtual tours of, the museums that I like, or go to lectures during at 3:00 in the afternoon. But nonetheless, I think that we have to kind of take this moment to really rethink how we're going to utilize different kinds of tools, what online outreach is going to look like. And then the other huge thing in our field is philanthropy. When can we talk to people? We have not sent out really any kind of philanthropic appeals. I think we have a gala coming up that we postponed. We are seeing, interestingly, possibly a little bit of an uptick from some of our free online programming. People are signing up after they attend them as members, which is great. Maybe we'll try to just gently remind people that they can become members. But, there's a lot of conversations. Yesterday, we had a long conversation about, can any of this stuff be monetized? My feeling is no. I don't know, but maybe you could do some more special things with your members or to drive some philanthropy. And a lot of directors are saying that their boards are saying, don't fundraise at all right now. No one wants to hear from you.
It's a very tricky point. And, I've talked about this on this chat, but as a board member of ISDP, and I'm the fundraising chair I'm stepping off, but it's very difficult to seek a balance because you still need to raise money, right? You still have budgets that, obviously everything has been revised, but the economic model for these nonprofits, especially, if you don't have a strong endowment or an endowment at all, you just have to. And, I think it's been interesting. I've seen some things now where even going on IG chat, you can hit a donate.
They just started something, and Kickstarter has done something now. So,
And who knows if those will be effective. But I guess if someone gives $1 each and every time they join something, that makes a little bit of a difference. But it's not the same as, the traditional ways that have been counted on. But those, as we all know, those were difficult too. Fundraising is, I find it a very difficult role to have.
My feeling right now is that, we're communicating with the people that are our stakeholders and supporters. We actually want to know how they're doing. We're concerned about their health and about their well-being. We want to kind of keep those relationships going. We want them to feel that the museum is there for them when we reopen. We're talking about doing some special things, for members, because obviously they get in for free. If we have time tickets, we want to kind of concierge them in so that this way they always have access to the museum no matter what, even if we have to do something where we limit the number of people in the museum. And, of course, these are small little things that we can do. But these are things that I think are important. I think right now the worst kinds of emails that I get are just simply support us. We're in danger. Things are, bad things are happening. I'm
it's
very
really hard,
and I'm pretty philanthropic. I give what I can to the organizations that I really care about. But I think right now it's about tone and communication. And so, what we're doing is just developing content for people. We want to kind of help them, if the museum is helpful, to calm them and to be a space where they can contemplate different things. that's great.
Right.
And then, later in the year when things are more stable, maybe we'll do something, a fundraising event or something special, that would be a low ticket cost item that we could, invite people to.
Right.
We'll see.
Right. And of course, in 48 hours, you might completely change your position on this.
I'm sure I will. Yeah. Well, I don't think unfortunately on that, I don't think I will, but maybe.
Brett, we've like maxed out our time. I didn't even have time to ask people for questions. So sorry, guys. If you have a question for Brett, I don't know. Maybe we'll do this again another time.
I'll answer them.
But I just want to say that, for me, going to the Noguchi has always been a place of solace and contemplation. It's where I find like some real peace in New York City. So it does differentiate itself for me from other institutions. And I think that is a pretty powerful thing for people who have gone there already. I mean, I think it's different if you have never been there. You just won't have that same atmosphere, right, as you can enjoy it online. And I think you guys did a great job. You archived everything online back in like late 2019, which was huge. And now
we have a lot of content, a lot of ways to share the museum right now. And I think that's actually one of the things that we keep on coming back to is that even with our doors closed, we want to share our space because we know how important it is to people. And, it is a space of contemplation. It is a mindful space. It is a place about thinking about art and nature, kind of harmoniously interacting with each other. And I think that's the driving force for me is not about driving attendance. It's actually about giving our space back to people in New York City so that they can come and maybe find a little bit of an oasis from the noise and the craziness around us. So that's our goal.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for working so hard on making it reopen again. And I hope you stay safe. I hope you stay not so crazy and, you get some rest. You definitely deserve it.
Thank you.
And I thank you so much, Brett. This has been great.
I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah.
See you soon.
Okay,
Bye,
everyone. This will be up for 24 hours. And then I'm coming back at 12 o'clock with Jeanette Andrews. So I'll see you all soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, Brett.